at the same time. It's hard to keep up with it all. Give me a second, y'all. Let me see if this comes back up. It does. Okay, now it's got the right thing. Part one. Now the slide says part one. We're good. Okay, so we're on paper 148, part one, training evangelists in Bethsaida. And the reason I was messed up, I was working on a paper on the angels today, and it was part two, so I can't get my parts straight. Well, you're kind of dark tonight, Pamela. So,
See if I can get another light.
Can't hardly see you.
Ugh.
Okay.
1657.
Let me see if I can get us started here. April 148, Training the Evangelists at Bethsaida. From May 3rd to October 3rd, AD 28, Jesus and the apostolic party were in residence at the Zebedee home at Bethsaida. Throughout this 5-month period of the dry season, an enormous camp was maintained by the seaside near the Zebedee residence, which had been greatly enlarged to accommodate the growing family of Jesus. This seaside camp occupied by an ever-changing population of truth seekers, healing candidates, and curiosity devotees, numbered from 500 to 1,500. This tented city was under the general supervision of David Zebedee, assisted by the Alphaeus twins. The encampment was a model in order and sanitation, as well as its general administration. The sick of different types were segregated and were under the supervision of a believer physician, a Syrian named Elman. So they had a very large camp. That's hard to even imagine back then, doesn't it?
I would
Okay.
imagine multiple temps.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that would be an extremely expensive tent.
Yeah, it really would be. And there's some maps you can look at later. This shows up really well on our website. And here's a close up of where the camp was. All right. Diane, you want to take the next one?
Throughout this period, the apostles would go fishing at least one day a week, selling their catch to David for consumption by the seaside encampment. The funds thus received were turned over to the group treasury. The 12 were permitted to spend 1 week out of each month with their families or friends.
So that gave them opportunity to rest and relax and that sort of thing too, taking off. All right, Gary,
You
would you
get
take
that?
the
Did you
next one?
catch that though?
Huh?
These guys only work 3 weeks out of the month.
3 weeks out of a month. Yeah, well, they were pretty busy the other 3 weeks, so I could understand
They
that.
didn't have Saturday, Sunday off.
Yeah. It was really funny. I was talking to Diane today about having the whole week off, and I started working, I guess, 2 days ago on the Book of Angels. So when I went back to work at the computer, I had to relearn everything because I'm so used to doing it every day. You get away from something for a few days and you forget what you're doing. So, all right. Gary, would you take the next one?
Yeah. While Andrew continued in general charge of the apostolic activities, Peter was in full charge of the school of the evangelists. The apostles all did their share in teaching groups of evangelists each forenoon, and both teachers and pupils taught the people during the afternoons. After the evening meal, 5 nights a week, the apostles conducted question classes for the benefit of the evangelists. Once a week, Jesus presided at this question hour, answering the holdover questions from the previous sessions.
It's hard to believe that they were this organized, isn't it? I mean, think about the period of time and how many people they had participating. It really is amazing. All right, Pam, would you take the next one, please?
In 5 months, several thousand came and went at this encampment, interested persons from every part of the Roman Empire and from the lands east of the Euphrates, were in frequent attendance. This was the longest settled and well-organized period of the Master's teaching. Jesus' immediate family spent most of this time at either Nazareth or Cana.
All right. So as it says, this is a well-organized period because they had so many people working at the same goal to teach everyone.
If you stop and think of the numbers of people that's coming in and out of this camp, you could understand how. Now, you got to remember also at that time, the populations were not as large as what they are now.
Yeah.
So this was a major movement.
Well, we got to remember too,
Yeah, it would be very
there
bright.
wasn't any TV or anything like that too. So if people didn't get out and interact with one another from their homes and in the street and stuff, they didn't talk to anybody, right?
Well, that just goes to prove the point I'm making, because that interaction that you just described would spread what the word faster than normal in our times.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you can see how the Sadducees would be concerned, and even Rome.
Yeah. Well, if the same thing tries to happen now, you get people on YouTube discounting everything, right? Or on the TV discounting everything. So you don't know you guess where you don't know what to believe. So if Jesus would have
Hold on.
gotten on the internet and YouTube
Excuse
now,
me, I got to take care of something.
then he would have, people, it would have been questionable whether they even believed him. Okay, that's the whole problem. All right. Who was up, Gary?
Rodney.
Rodney.
I am.
All right.
Don't you think their tents were canvas?
Yes. Yeah, that's what they would use as canvas tents. So people like well, the Apostle Paul was a tent maker at one time, right? And so people like that, they would be in touch with things like that. It's kind of interesting. It's more amazing to me that Paul didn't come along before Jesus actually died. He never met Jesus. And so, just the fact that the whole New Testament was built around Paul, and was not really when you think about it, he was not really an apostle. He was a self-proclaimed apostle. He was never inducted into the apostolic corps, was he?
No.
So he did everything from the outside, and all the letters he wrote to the churches was before the first gospel was ever published. So, the church became the church of Paul rather than the church of Jesus. So, before the gospels were written.
Mhm.
All right. Rodney, would you take the
Okay.
next one?
The encampment, as was the apostolic family. David Zebedee managed this large tent city so that it became a self-sustaining enterprise, notwithstanding that no one was ever turned away. This ever-changing camp was an indispensable feature of Peter's evangelistic training school.
So they kind of use this as the sample to use from here on out. There. Okay. Let's see, the new school of the prophets. Peter, James, and Andrew were the committee designated by Jesus to pass upon applicants for admission to the school of evangelists. All the races and nationalities of the Roman world and the East, as far as India, were represented among these students in this new school of the prophets. This school was conducted on the plan of learning and doing. What the students learned during the forenoon, they taught to the assembly by the seaside during the afternoon. After supper, they would informally discuss both the learning of the forenoon and the teaching of the afternoon. So you learn something and then you do it, right? Which is a good way to get it ingrained in your mind. Diane.
Each of the apostolic teachers taught his own view of the gospel of the kingdom. They made no effort to teach just alike. There was no standardized or dogmatic formulation of theologic doctrines. Though they all taught the same truth, each apostle presented his own personal per- per- interpretation of the master's teaching, and Jesus upheld this presentation of the diversity of personal experience in the things of the kingdom, unfailingly harmonizing and organizing these many and divergent views of the gospel at his weekly question hours. Notwithstanding this great decree of personal liberty in matters of teaching, Simon Peter tended to dominate the theology of the school of evangelists. Next to Peter, James Zebedee exerted the greatest personal influence.
You're muted.
I said I got a big question for you for y'all. What changed between this period of time and after Jesus died about the teaching the truth of the gospel according to your own interpretation? What changed after Jesus died?
Well, it became dogmatized.
It became dogma. You hit it right on the money, Rodney. And who created the dogma?
Well, it was between Peter and Paul.
Paul.
Mainly Peter, huh?
Well, it was mainly Paul. Yeah. The dogma started because Paul was trained in the Jewish theology and philosophy and Mithraism as a boy, right?
Well,
So
he was, where did he grow up?
he grew up there and he was considered a Roman citizen, but he grew up a Jew. Okay, so he
Uh,
was a Jewish Roman citizen, and his influences were the Jewish religion and Mithraism. When he was a teenager, according to what we know, he was a Mithraist. Okay, so all the all this dogma and stuff that ended up coming into the church, like making the sacrificial lamb thing, the church, part of the Christian church, and all these things like the um, all the things that Jesus tried to get away from, like the priesthood and that sort of thing, and the myths attached to everything, like the virgin birth, that came from Mithraism. Every single religion before Christianity, all their leaders came from virgin births. All of them were crucified. All of them were expected to come again in a second coming. All these things are all from all the religions that were there before Christianity, and all of that was transferred by whom? Paul the
oh,
Apostle. Okay. And if we realize that, we realize the issues in our own Bible, because when the Council of Nicaea, can't even think of the city, 396 years later, when they had the council to put all of the books of the Bible together, what did they do? They went by the concepts of Paul, not the concepts of Jesus. And that is the main issue with the New Testament today. If they would have gone with the gospel of Jesus as Jesus taught it, we would have had a totally different New Testament than we had today. And we know this from reading it. If you read the New Testament and you compare it to the Urantia book, you go, wait a minute, Jesus didn't say that way. Never did. All right. So it's an interesting dichotomy between, what is actual Jesus and what is actually the thought theology of Paul.
That's too bad, too.
Yeah, it's really too bad. And I know y'all think I'm just beating up on Paul. I'm not. I just want to bring the truth to light. I want people to understand when they read this book, this is a retelling of the story of Jesus according to the midwayers that were there when everything happened. It is no secondhand knowledge. It's not secondhand knowledge in the fact that these midwayers recorded everything that happened. This isn't some story that somebody told 60 some years after Jesus died.
Right.
That's the big difference. All right. So that's why everything is so clear in this book.
Hmm.
All right. Gary's still gone. Oh, Pam, would you take the next one?
The 100 and more evangelists trained during this 5 months by the seaside represented the material from which, excepting Abner and John's apostles, the later 70 gospel teachers and the preachers were drawn. The school of evangelists did not have everything in common to the same degree as did the 12.
Okay, so they didn't have communal living, did they? They didn't share everything. The evangelists didn't. Not like the apostles. It was a totally different situation. And Jesus set it up that way. He did not intend for anyone but the apostles to live in a communal manner like that. All right. Rodney.
These evangelists, though they taught and preached the gospel, did not baptize believers until after they were later ordained and commissioned by Jesus as the 70 messengers of the kingdom. Only 7 of the large number healed at the sundown scene at this place, or to be found among these evangelistic students. The nobleman's son of Capernaum was one of those trained for gospel service in Peter's school.
Remember the story of the nobleman's son?
Well,
Yeah, that's what they're talking about here. Okay, he was healed by faith from afar, right?
Mhm.
And he became one of the 70 evangelists. It's interesting here that they actually trained 100 evangelists, and we're going to find that a little bit later, but only 70 of them were chosen to be the representation of the evangelists. So not everyone was up to snuff for this, were they? All right. The Bethsaida Hospital. In connection with the seaside encampment, Elman, the Syrian physician, with the assistance of the corps of 25 young women and 12 men, organized and conducted for 4 months what would be regarded as the kingdom's first hospital. Sweetie, you need to go check that. You hear the cat fighting? Somebody's fighting out there. Oh. Just go check for me real quick. Sorry, y'all. We got a cat fight going on outside. Just make
Sorry
sure
about
everything's
that.
okay. At this infirmary, located a short distance to the south of the main tented city, they treated the sick in accordance with all known material methods, as well as by the spiritual practices of prayer and faith encouragement. Jesus visited the sick of this encampment not less than 3 times a week and made personal contact with each sufferer. As far as we know, no so-called miracles of supernatural healing occurred among the 1,000 afflicted and ailing persons who went away from this infirmity improved or cured. However, the vast majority of these benefited individuals ceased not to proclaim that Jesus had healed them. Did y'all catch that? Not a
Mm-hmm.
single one of them was a miraculous cure, but many of them were cured by their own faith and had a spiritual healing. You
well, it
see,
says as far as they know.
as far as they
So they
know.
weren't real sure.
Yeah, I think, oh, I'm hearing myself. Diane's walked out with her earphones. Okay, Gary, would you take the next one?
Okay. Many of the cures effected by Jesus in connection with his ministry in behalf of Eman's patients did indeed appear to resemble the workings of miracles, but we were instructed that they were only just such transformations of mind and spirit as may occur in the experience of expectant and faith-dominated persons who are under the immediate and spiritual influence of a strong, positive, and benefit personality whose ministry banishes fear, and destroys anxiety.
Now, who do you think that the beings were that told him this?
Let me see. I mean, look, is
How
that
about
reference
the,
the
how
Bible
about the
or
guardian seraphim? You know, they're in constant contact with the midwares. So that's probably where the information came from, whether they were healed, a miraculous healing, or they were healed by the spiritual transformation. Okay?
I thought you was referring to Jesus.
No. No, Jesus probably wouldn't tell them one way or another. But since the seraphim are in constant contact with the midwares, more than likely that's where they got the information. Because the guardian seraphim would know one way or another. Okay.
So with the light carriers.
So would the life carriers. That's right. That's true. Pam, would you take the next one?
Uh-huh. Elman and his associates endeavored to teach the truth to these sick ones concerning the possession of evil spirits, but they met with little success. The belief that physical sickness and mental derangement could be caused by the dwelling of a so-called unclean spirit in the mind or body of the afflicted person was well nigh universal.
And I
So
can
this,
understand why they would think that.
yeah, especially during the time prior to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. And all his contact with the sick and afflicted, when it came to the technique of treatment or the revelation of the unknown causes of disease, Jesus did not disregard the instructions of his paradise brother, Emmanuel, given ere he embarked upon the venture of the Urantia incarnation. Notwithstanding this, those who ministered to the sick learned many helpful lessons by observing the manner in which Jesus inspired the faith and confidence of the sick and suffering.
Now, anybody remember what the charges Emmanuel gave him about, letting his ministry turning into just a healing ministry?
Right.
Y'all remember that?
I think it said don't do it because it'll make it, it'll distract from the message.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. All right. The camp disbanded a short time before the season for the increase in chills and fever drew on. So they had a season of chills and fever that came every year, apparently. All right. Since Diane's not here, I'll do the next one too. The Father's business. Throughout this period, Jesus conducted public services at the encampment less than a dozen times and spoke only once in the Capernaum synagogue, the second Sabbath before their departure with the newly trained evangelists upon their second public preaching tour of Galilee. Let me turn you back on, dear, because I turned it off. I was listening to myself. Okay. Yeah. You got your things back in? Okay. Do you want to take the next one? Then?
Not since his baptism had the master been so much alone as during this period of the evangelist training encampment at Bethsaida. Whenever any one of the apostles ventured to ask Jesus why he was absent so much from their midst, he would invariably answer that he was about the Father's business.
Kind of makes you wonder if he was actually in an active participation in running the local universe during that time, doesn't it?
Sounds like
it was. All right. Gary, would you take the next one, please?
During this period of absence, Jesus was accompanied by only two of the apostles. He had released Peter, James, and John temporarily from their assignment as his personal companions that they might also participate in the work of training the new candidates, numbering more than 100. When the master desired to go to the hills about the Father's business, he would summon to accompany him any two of the apostles who might be at liberty. In this way, each of the 12 enjoyed an opportunity for close association and intimate contact with Jesus.
Why do y'all think that Jesus always had at least two apostles with him?
One for each side.
Yeah.
One good friend deserves another. Instead of one good turn. How about for as witnesses to actually what happens, during the
That's true.
soul? Human witnesses. All right. Pam, would you take the next?
Mhm. It has not been revealed.
Hang on. There you go.
Diane, will you go on mute? There, thanks.
Yeah.
It has not been revealed for the purposes of this record, but we have been led to infer that the master, during many of these solitary seasons in the hills, was in direct and executive association with many of his chief directors of universe affairs. Ever since about the time of his baptism, his incarnated sovereign of our universe had become increasingly and consciously active in the direction of certain phases of universe administration. And we have always held the opinion that, in some way not revealed to his immediate associates during these weeks of decreased participation in the affairs of Earth, he was engaged in the direction of those high spirit intelligences who were charged with the running of a vast universe, and that the human Jesus chose to designate such activities on his part as being about his Father's business.
There you go. That has it right. He was active in some affairs of the universe. Rodney.
Many times when Jesus was alone for hours, but when two of his apostles were nearby, they observed his features undergo rapid and multitudinous changes, although they heard him speak no words. Neither did they observe any visible manifestation of celestial beings who might have been in communication with their master, such as some of them did witness on a subsequent occasion.
Okay, so most of the time they would not see him actually talking to anybody, but his appearance would change as he was communicating with these individuals. They didn't hear him talk. So, big question here. You think he was talking to them mentally through telepathy or something?
Yeah, I think so.
I would think so.
Yeah, makes
I
sense.
wonder, makes you wonder though, why his physical body, was it his body, or perhaps it was the energy around his body?
Well, it could be he was kind of in a phase between
A Morancha phase?
Morantia and immortal in between there somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So he may have been phasing in and out of both the finite existence and the Morantia existence at the same time.
Mhm.
Could very well be the case. All right. Let's see. Does that make me up again? I think evil, sin, and iniquity. It was the habit of Jesus 2 evenings each week to hold special converse with individuals who desired to talk with him in a certain secluded and sheltered corner of the Zebedee garden. At one of these evening conversations in private, Thomas asked the master this question: why is it necessary for men to be born of the Spirit in order to enter the kingdom? Is rebirth necessary to escape the control of the evil one? Master, what is evil? When Jesus heard these questions, he said to Thomas, pretty straightforward, Diane.
Do not make the mistake of confusing evil with the evil one. More correctly, the iniquitous one. He whom you call the evil one is the son of self-love, the high administrator who knowingly went into deliberate rebellion against the rule of my father and his loyal sons. But I have already vanquished these sinful rebels. Make clear in your mind these different attitudes towards the Father and his universe. Never forget these laws of relation to the Father's will.
Now, what is he talking about here when he said he's already vanquished these sinful rebels?
He took their power.
He took their power, and remember Mount Hermon?
Yeah, that's where he did it.
Yeah. He saw Satan falling. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's what he's talking about. In other words, they no longer have any hold or control of human beings, and their power is gone to do anything.
Isn't
Okay.
it the difference now because we have Caligastia on this earth?
Well, we don't know that he's still here, Gary, completely. We know he was still here during the beginning of the transmission of these messages, but as far as him being removed, he could have been removed any time. I think the evil we have to worry about now is the evil within our own minds and how we embrace evil and embrace iniquity in our own lives. If we never embrace equal and we never become iniquitous, do we have anything to fear whatsoever? No,
Chocolate.
nothing whatsoever. You know, it's interesting because as bad as this world seems to us right now, it gives us the opportunity to show our faith and how dedicated we are to doing the will of God. Okay, and we would not be afforded this opportunity if this was a perfect world, would we? Because if it was a perfect world, there wouldn't be evil run amok. There wouldn't be iniquitous people all around us. All these situations would not be coming up because it would be no evil in the souls of men to come forth and hurt one another and that sort of thing. Does that make
You,
sense?
you
Yeah.
know,
So we're
Roger,
blessed by being in the bad situation we're in. That's what I'm saying.
but you know, all our problems would not exist if we followed his rule of being of the golden rule.
That's true. And we wouldn't have problems if we went entirely in our lives by doing the will of God in our lives, would we? Because these things would not come up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a hard concept for us to get in our minds that all this stuff we see on TV and the internet and everything else, all this stuff would not be happening if we did two things: follow the will of God and follow the golden rule, just like you said, Gary. We wouldn't do these things to one another and hurt each other. Okay. All right. Jesus is going to go over through evil, sin, and iniquity in this next one. All right. Who's up, Gary? I think Gary's up.
Okay. Evil is the unconscious or unintended transgression of the divine law, the Father's will. Evil is likewise the measure of the imperfectness of the obedience to the Father's will.
Stop right there, Gary. What is evil?
It's ignorance.
It's ignorance. That's exactly right, Rodney. It's ignorance, unintended transgression of divine law. That's all the divine laws, right? That's just not the interaction between people, but it also includes all the divine laws of the physical universe that's set up to keep the world going.
So
Okay,
evil is practically everywhere in the
everywhere. That's right.
universes,
That's right.
except for the central universe.
That's exactly
Not
right.
there.
You can measure how imperfect it is by comparing it to the obedience of the Father's will. So if we act within the Father's will all the time, will evil affect us?
No.
No, because we would be within the will of God, so we won't run into unconscious, unattended transgression of the divine law. And that would include what? That would include the physical laws of the universe that were set up to keep us safe and secure within this material world. Okay? Now, the reason
Ask a
I bring
rather
that
simple
up is
question.
this. The reason I bring that up is this. When we step out of the divine will, we can step into a finite reality that's wrong because it's not following the divine laws of the will of God the Father. Okay? What were you going to say, Gary?
What can you put it in a sentence or two? What's the Father's will?
The Father's will is basically following the plan that the Father set up in the beginning of time for all human beings to live by loving one another, giving to one another, loving God, and then loving each other just as we love God. That is the will of God. And if we follow that, then all the rest of the things like the golden rule and the 10 commandments and all these things, we won't do any of these things, right? Because we have it ingrained in our mind. Every action we take is this what God would want me to do? Is this the will of God? And if we ask ourselves those questions, when we get in situations in which it's questionable which way you should go, you can always follow the will of God because you know innately what your moral choices are and what you have been trained to understand as moral law. Okay? That's why teaching your children is so important, right? So they understand moral law, they will understand divine will. Why do you think we have a conscience? It's that your conscience is not the will of God, it's your moral law saying, hey, I have learned better than this. Okay? That's what that is. All right, let's go on to the next one, Gary.
Sin is the conscious, knowing, and deliberate transgression of the divine law, the Father's will. Sin is the measure of unwillingness to be divinely led and spiritually directed.
What's the key word there?
Conscious.
Unwillingness. Okay. So sin is knowing you should do one thing, but you deliberately transgress what you know is right, which is the divine law. And that is the Father's will. If we stay within the Father's will all the time, if we do what you know is right all the time, then you will stay away from sinning in your life. Sin is not necessary in life. People think, oh, I sin because I don't know any better. No, you sin because you choose to sin. Okay?
You deliberately
Deliberately,
transgress.
you hit it, Rodney. It's a will for act, is it not?
Uh,
I mean, any way you look at it, you have to choose to sin because it's a conscious knowing and
Right.
deliberate transgression.
You have to choose. Correct.
Right. All right. Now let's talk about iniquity. Gary, would you take the next one, please?
Iniquity is a willful, determined, and persistent transgression of the divine law, the Father's will. Iniquity is a measure of the continued rejection of the Father's loving plan of personality survival and the Son's merciful ministry of salvation.
Wow.
It's
Is
what
not that
Lucifer did.
that's exactly what Lucifer did. And he led all these other beings in with him, didn't he? Okay. So he was not only iniquitous, a willful, determined, and persistent transgression. Think of it this way. If you know when you go in that bar tomorrow night and have a dozen drinks, that when you come home, you're going to do what? You're going to injure yourself. You're going to injure your spouse. You're going to injure your children. You're going to injure your relationships with other people because you say stupid things, do stupid things, and act like a stupid individual, right?
Yes.
Does that make sense? That is a iniquitous, willful, determined, and persistent transgression of God's divine law, which is what? The Father's will. And it is outside the plan that the Father have. It's a rejection of his loving plan of personality survival, his plan to make sure you survive past this life. It is also a slap in the face to the Son, the number one Son, and the Creator sons of the merciful ministry of the salvation of them coming to the planet to show us the proper way. Okay? And that's what's called iniquity. Because it's called iniquity because you do it over and over and over again. When you go home tonight and you hit your wife or you hit your children and you know what's wrong, what is it? It's an iniquitous, willful, determined, persistent transgression of what?
The divine law.
The divine law, because you know it's better. You know better. You know it's wrong. Okay, that's what this sin is about right above it. It's a conscious knowing and deliberate transgression. Okay, iniquity is that same transgression done over and over and over again. So when you come in and you yell at your wife or you yell at your husband and call them all these names in the book, do you think that's the will of God? No, not at all. So think about it next time, okay? It can help your change of habit to that of a spiritual, conscious habit of doing the will of God. Does that make sense? I'm preaching to the choir here, but I'm also preaching to those who are listening, because people don't realize what this is all about. This is the crux of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who's up next? Pam, I think you're
Yeah.
up. Get a whole paragraph. I'll read all
By
of it.
nature, before the rebirth of the spirit, mortal man is subject to inherent evil tendencies, but such natural imperfections of behavior are neither sin nor iniquity. Mortal man is just beginning his long ascent to the perfection of the Father in paradise. To be imperfect or partial in natural endowment is not sinful. Man is indeed subject to evil, but he is in no sense the child of the evil one unless he has knowingly and deliberately chosen the paths of sin and the life of iniquity. Evil is inherent in the natural order of this world, but sin is an attitude of conscious rebellion which was brought to this world by those who fell from spiritual light into gross darkness.
So what is the number one issue here it has to have to be that way? We have to choose it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't choose, you can't fall into sinfulness without first making a choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You choose to be the way you are. Whether you say, "Oh no, it's not my fault. My parents beat me. My mother hated me. My father hated me. I had all these disadvantages. I was poor. All these other things. Those aren't excuses for being who you are. You can overcome all of it. If you don't believe it, look at me. I was about as rotten as kid as you could want, but I had a moral compass. That's how I came over. And this is what Jesus is talking about. You have to make those moral decisions. It's a long ascent to paradise, and this is where we get into those moral or spiritual habits. And it's all in how we choose.
So,
Okay.
Roger,
Yeah.
on a normal evolutionary mortal world, they just more or less contend with evil there's not much sin on the planets.
Not as much,
Because,
Rodney. Yeah.
I mean, sin was brought to this planet.
Yeah. Yeah. But they can sin too, though, Rodney, but they have to choose to, right? And the choices are not as readily available on a planet like you're talking about as they are here. That's why I say in essence, we have a blessing or an advantage, if you will, because we are given the opportunity to choose over and over and over again that which is right. And that experience only comes from living on a rebellious world, doesn't it? If you live on a non-rebellious world, you don't get put in those situations. That's why when we go on to the mansion worlds and we go up the scale and go to paradise, we become more and more valuable to the teachers as teachers for those who come behind us, because many of these beings won't come from a world like ours. They have no concept of what sin and iniquity that's used over and over and over again is like. So what do we become? We become the teachers of those who need to know. We are the experiential teachers for those who come behind us. They are the non-experiential students that have to learn it through our experience.
Phew.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I lose everybody? Y'all all have blank faces. What the heck is he talking about?
I'll be honest, I was just thinking that we are a good example of bad.
We are. That's
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. We are. Okay, let's go on.
It's
Uh,
Rodney's turn.
Rodney.
You are confused, Thomas, by the doctrines of the Greeks and the errors of the Persians. You do not understand the relationships of evil and sin because you view mankind as beginning on earth with a perfect Adam and rapidly degenerating through sin to man's present deplorable estate. But why do you refuse to comprehend the meaning of the record which discloses how Cain, the son of Adam, went over into the land of Nod and there got himself a wife? And why do you refuse to interpret the meaning of the record which portrays the sons of God finding wives for themselves among the daughters of men?
So what's he teaching us? He's teaching us all the way back to Adam, and even before Adam, this world was not perfect, was it? The decisions weren't perfect. None of them were. We didn't come from a sin-stricken world. That evil and that sin actually started with what? The Lucifer rebellion. Okay, so it's been here a long time, and we never were owned by Lucifer. We were never owned by Caligastia. We weren't children of evil. We had to choose these things. Okay, and it always comes back to choice. And look at what he's talking about here. Adam's son went over to the land of Nod and got himself a wife because of why? The descendants of Nod, okay, were from the original Caligastia 100. Remember that? Okay. So the best stock of human being on the planet, even though they rebelled, came from what? The Caligastia 100. So Adam's son went over to um, uh, the land of Nod and met, what is it, Rada? And they had children, and she was much younger. He was 132 years old. He was an old man. But he married this 20-something-year-old woman from the land of Nod because she had the best human stock to reproduce with. Okay? And so that what Jesus is talking about is here is our interpretation of the scriptures that because Adam and Eve defaulted that the world was covered in sin is just not true. I went around about the horse to get to that one, didn't I? Right? All right. So let's go on. Well, I'm running out of time again. I guess I'm up again next. Unless Rodney, did you just read?
I did.
Okay. Men are indeed by nature evil, but not necessarily sinful. The new birth, the baptism of the Spirit, is essential to deliverance from evil and necessary for entrance into the kingdom of heaven. None of this distracts from the fact that man is the Son of God. Neither does this inherent presence of potential evil. Inherent presence, you see that? Of potential evil mean that man is in some mysterious way estranged from the Father in heaven, so that as an alien, foreigner, or stepchild, he must some manner seek for legal adoption by the Father. All such notions are born first of your misunderstanding of the Father, and second of your ignorance of the origin and nature and destiny of man.
Mhm.
So because our lack of understanding. Why do you think Don Estes named his church the origin, nature, and destiny of deity? Because we have a misunderstanding of our own past and our pathway to a new future. And Jesus is telling us the only way we can go on this new pathway is what? To be born of spirit and get a new attitude about the way you live. Because if you keep living in the same old sinful, iniquitous world as you always did and make the same decisions, will you grow spiritually? Not likely, right? You have to make a new pathway, and that's what's taught. They're talking about being born of spirit. And Jesus is going to explain this more here. I hope we can get through this tonight before this next section.
The Greeks and others have taught you that man is descending from godly perfection steadily down towards oblivion or destruction. I have come to show that man, by entrance into the kingdom, is ascending certainly and surely up to God and divine perfection. Any being who is in any manner falls short of the divine and spiritual ideals of the eternal Father's will is potentially evil, but such beings are in no sense sinful, much less iniquitous.
Notice Jesus says here that these people can become evil, but not necessarily sinful and iniquitous. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's because we've been taught just the opposite, that we have descended from a godly state down to a non-godly state into destruction, when it's actually just the opposite. By accepting the kingdom, you start ascending. You're on your ascension plan from that moment on. All right. Gary.
Okay, Thomas, have you not read about this in the scriptures? Where it is written, "You are the children of the Lord, are your God. I will be your father, and he shall be my son. I have chosen him to be my son, and I will be his father. Bring your sons from far, and my daughters from the ends of the earth, even everyone who is called by my name, for I have created them for my glory. You are the sons of the living God. They who have the Spirit of God are indeed the sons of God. While there is a material part of the human father in the natural child, there is a spiritual part of the Heavenly Father in every faith son of the kingdom. And he's
And what part is that?
the thought adjuster.
That's exactly right. It's your spiritual part. So every single individual has a part of God within them, which will show you the way back to the Father if you just let it. Right? All right. Pam, would you take our last paragraph for tonight?
All this and much more Jesus said to Thomas, and much of it the apostle comprehended, although Jesus admonished him to speak not to the others concerning these matters until after I shall have returned to the Father. And Thomas did not mention this interview until after the Master had departed from this world.
And why would he say this? This is always a big mystery to everyone, but it's really pretty simple. He said this because he did not want to confuse the new believers by over teaching them something that they weren't capable of understanding yet. And he knew that when the Spirit of truth was poured out at Pentecost, then it would guide them in these things. And at that point, Thomas or anybody else could talk to him about it, and the Spirit of truth would lead them in the proper direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so the mystery solved. All right, next time we'll take up section 5, the purpose of affliction. Let's change our slides out here and reshare. Okay, whose turn is it to read the prayer?
Diane and then me.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Diane?
Yeah.
Prayer of acceptance. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By this same faith, I became a child of God and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe of Nebadon, as Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank everyone for coming and listening to my ranting and raving.
That was perfect timing. It's just 7.
I know. That is perfect timing, isn't it, for a change? All right, yeah, thanks for coming. We love you guys, and we will continue this on Thursday. For those who are listening to us remotely, thank you for coming and listening to us remotely, and we all hope everyone got a little something out of this message tonight.
That was good.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right. See everybody Thursday.
Thank you,
then.
Roger.
You're welcome.
I have a dental, so I'm not sure whether I'll make it or not.
Well, if you do, we'll see you then.
Okay.
All right.
Take
All
care.
right. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
y'all. Y'all
Love
have a
you
great
guys.
one.
Bye.
Good night.